Live,
No, we're good.
what's that?
We're good.
All right, go ahead. Call to order this work session for the Pleasant Hill School District Board of Directors, Monday, September 23rd. We'll go ahead and start with, I'll give everybody a chance to finish chewing. Good. Pledge allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Brings us to our mission statement, which is to graduate all students with high levels of academic and personal achievement, ready for post-secondary excellence, prepared for productive, compassionate citizenship, for research-based instruction and collaborative system of support. 3.0 development board goals. 3.1 develop annual 24-25 board goals from the list below, utilizing the attached protocol.
So going through protocol, or see if there's any questions or even suggestions to change. The idea of the protocol is that two-sided page here. Phase one is what we're doing tonight. So distribute the goal ideas. So there's the 6 potential goal ideas. And taking a moment to, I think we were maybe presented those, or just to get a better idea of what it was that the goals were around. So these sort of background information regarding goals. So review those. And then that number 2 there is individual reflection. So considering the feasibility and alignment with the organization's mission and potential impact. 3, initial ranking. So I've got some priority sheets, top sheets here that you can rank them. 1 to 6, with 1 being highest priority. We'll tally those. Number 4, consolidating the rankings, calculate the ranking for each idea, and then 2 ideas for those average scores and consider the top priorities. 5, group discussion. So members discuss 2 top ranked ideas, considering the pros and cons, potential challenges, and alignment with organization goals, and then a preliminary selection. And there may not be need for this, but if there is, we can take a quick straw poll, select the final 1 or 2 goals based on discussion. Phase 2 then is to go through a goal development. So first there is define and select the goals in detail, includes identifying objectives, desired outcomes, and the KPIs. 2, resource assessment, to evaluate resources, if there's any financial or human time. Need to achieve the goals, any additional support or partnerships required. 3, assign responsibilities. Ensure clear roles and responsibilities are defined. Develop an action plan, create a detailed action plan for each goal, outline steps, milestones, responsible parties, and deadlines. And then number 5 would be taking a formal action on that October 7th board meeting. If you flip that over, phase 3, the implementation monitoring between October and May. With a final review and reflection May of 2025. And then phase 4, completion of next steps, end of May, going into June. Document the outcomes, celebrate successes, and plan for future goals.
Questions, comments, concerns about the protocol itself? Right. I will comment that this is incredibly helpful, and I want to thank Jim for taking the time to develop this for us. Every year that I've been on the board, we've been trying to do something along this line, but we've never had this concrete to actually come up with something. And agree with something that, Drew said. Last meeting, and that it's important to come up with a plan to really focus on that, and not get ahead of ourselves. I'm really encouraged by how so far out, we're starting with the GO map to actually come up with something and track it, and make it meaningful.
Next is there's 6 goals. I threw another on here as well, but assessment data, endowment development, increased visibility and presence at school community events, increased presence with Pleasant Hill Education Foundation, Booster Club, and PTO, follow up with students from the equity work session. I think that could be a larger community group that could work as well. Conduct culture and climate survey. And this is that time to go through, maybe they might not need any additional information, but if there's maybe something on here that belongs to you in particular to give, just to bring you back what that was, and thoughts behind it for the group, and give the clarification, ask questions, and we can go through and prioritize.
Okay, well, I think the first 2 were brought up by me, so, the assessment data. I feel like my whole purpose, our whole purpose of being here is to make sure the district is moving in a forward direction. That what we're providing our instructors and our students is taking them from point A to point B. And I don't know how we ensure that we're doing that if we're not assessing it all.
You consider the Gibbles reports to be that kind of thing assessment?
Absolutely.
So are you thinking there are other? Can't think of the other one, well, like the attendance
Elementary,
rates,
elementaries use the cadence for math assessment, right? And the same, I understand like the same things are not available for the secondary as our elementary, but I'm talking about something as simple as. I had this conversation with Chris last year. Like, in my math books, there was a pre-test and a post-test. That's all I'm asking. Like, if you scored a 35 on the pre-test and you scored a 65 on the post-test, you made progress. I know a huge part of it has come up with the reporting of the Ds and Fs and such, that because we're small and there's one teacher for one grade of math, that basically that number is reflecting on that instructor. And in sensitivity to that, I think it would be great to work something out with either with the union through an MOU or something, that this is never meant to be punitive. It's an assessment of, like, we approved a math curriculum. Is it any good? Is it working? What tools do you need? Do you need a class size change? Is this an attendance problem? I mean, there's I think a myriad of things that could be going wrong besides poor instruction. And I think the data is so meaningful that we need to do what we need to do to make the teachers feel comfortable hitting the data. That it's not gonna come back on freshman math that, well, you are the problem. Through this one assessment, we've approved that you are the problem, and that's not the case, but we do need to assess the kids in some way.
develop some kind of cohort track instead of just looking at like freshmen every year, like what's their grade level going. You look at math, for instance, and like the grade distribution for the freshmen, and then you look at them as sophomores and then as juniors, and like are more people getting A's and B's than at the beginning, or is it going the other way? You know, like are we helping them read their skill level or something along those lines? Where it's not focused on that class is more focused on like the kids. Are they improving as they go through the district, or are they getting worse, staying the same, or what? Maybe that would be help release of that or something.
Even going from a general, like a PSAT or an SAT test bank, and that regardless of math level, like take the test at the beginning, think, I don't know what the best way is, and I'm very flexible on that because I know that I don't know. But I know that we need to do something. Otherwise, we're just likely. On the endowment piece, I see an opportunity. I talked to one of our budget committee members a little bit about the formation and the rules and such, because Sherry does such an excellent job and we have such a large ending fund balance. I don't want to certainly all of that, or too much of that to become unfluid for us. But I do think putting it in an endowment fund, and just being able to either pull the interest off and put it in our general fund or reinvest the interest at the end of the year. This is 100% not probably gonna pay off in our board lifetime, maybe even our physical lifetime, but if it keeps getting chipped into and added to over the next 20 years, Pleasant Hill could be in a position where if the state said, sorry, we don't have anything for you, or we have half of what we gave you last year, we're good. Just on the pure interest of that account.
Those, yeah, with the admin team. Some additional inside, I'm thinking of in regards to assessments, that seems like something that we're gonna answer on, considering it would involve working something out with the union.
Yeah, there's really not a union issue to go with it. There can be we're all gonna experience this, at some level but just the state just delayed the release of the state assessment data, so. But every year we experience this when that data gets put in the registrar. I think because it's a reflection on the entire school district, especially when you're trending down. If you're going up and everyone feels good, everything down, it can feel personal. The only evaluation that can take place of a licensed employee is from an administrator with an administrative license by law. So it's not, it would come from myself or one of our administrators as far as the evaluation goes. So there's more of a personal conversation to see what was causing a teacher to feel a particular way, like B's and F's becoming shared as to what it was, maybe a reflection on them. And I think I looked to, is there a reason for that reflection, that self-reflection as far as the D's and F's? And if there is, that's a conversation I think for the supervisor and the teacher to have. Otherwise, the data is the data, and I think we developed a culture around. Still in school, and she already talked about saying no blame as far as looking at the data. It's just the data. It really comes out. I think what we do with it, their assessment data is tricky. So I think in the simplest forms, what Jen talked about is a pre and post test. That's covered within our evaluation system now. The teachers have to do 2 student learning goals, so there'll be a pre and post test and 1 professional learning goal. And then you see on every other year, it's just for another some of the in doing. So we have some of that data right now. That data is not going to be good data as far as from a policy level to telling you whether or not your investments are having a change or making a difference. It's gonna be such a small amount, so that, 1 unit for 1 less, number of lessons, I guess, but one small sample. Dimples, something like we do 3 times a year. Or for instance, U of O's got another program called Easy CBM, which takes you up into 7th grade. I just got a math component, also. Still doesn't give you necessarily a end of year snapshot, but it can give you snapshots 3 times a year. You also have to understand when you're doing that is that the score in which you are being scored against or normed against, it is moving as well. So it doesn't look, you don't take and give a student a fall test. That is meant to be able to provide information for intervention services. And it is truly meant to be like a fall 3rd grade test. So the test that you give them in the winter is meant to showcase that they've actually made that growth and possibly some test score changes, and then it changes again in the spring. So again, it's just it's a matter of being able to identify what you're looking for, what purposes that you're looking for, and be able to match that. There are other systems out there. They usually stop, I think they might go as high as 9th grade. They're electronic and they'll come at a cost. As far as tracking where students are and seeing changes in data, the entire dashboard, scores for students, interventions. Just the computer side of it is one cost, the other side of it is the cost of the interventions that are located. So. Thoughts on the assessment data.
You feel like what we have tells you where you want to how we're doing?
I believe that the longitudinal targets that we're looking at right now, based off of how we're setting our budget and where we're putting our efforts, definitely has alignment to doing that. And like all data, it becomes interesting when you look at it as well. So when we look at our longitudinal targets, our regular attenders, that's on last year's data. It's easy to see. Our 3rd grade ELA scores, that's on last year's data. It's easy to see. I think when I say easy to say, it's easy to see to say that this is our 23-24 school year kids. There's 2 of the markers. The 4-year cohort graduation rate and our 5th year completers is not based on last year's data. It's 22-23 students. And so those 2 sets of data points will always be known. And those are the difficult, I think, pieces, especially for the 5 of you to be able to say, we're always a year behind.
Tells you how you did, it doesn't tell you how you're doing.
Correct. It doesn't. And when you start to look at what you're doing and how you're doing, there is the OSAS data that is really meant to be a systems check. But again, we just have to recognize that right now our opt-out numbers are really high. So it's still a systems check. It's just a systems check for the students that are taking it. The integrated guidance plan is built around our focal group of students, and that's for us as primarily students that are identified for special education services. And that is also the largest, I think, portion probably collectively of students that are also taking the test, for us. Other pieces of data outside of that kind of summative OSAS is again, like we're doing with DIBELS and CBM, and again, there's a number of other folks out there that offer programs to do that work. The general type of convention, that service are probably where you're at. There's no. You're at grade 2.1, second grade, first month. You might be at 2.6, second grade, 6 months as far as reading or math level. It is. Difficult, but I'll go back to you. So is it giving me what we want? Ultimately, there is some trust in hiring and aligning staff and providing professional development time for staff to align the work that they're doing. So that, and to be able to norm the work that they're doing. And we're getting into just some of these conversations right now, and say norm the work that they're doing. Getting math teachers to sit down and actually discuss what does it mean? What does an A mean? What does a B mean? What does a C mean? Or when you're scoring a particular assignment, what does it actually mean? Like in a writing class, what does an A mean or what does a 10 mean? And line that back to our standards. And that is some of the work that we started 2 years ago with the course outlines. It's a little bit of the work that we're doing with the course of the graduate, like it's a little bit bigger picture. Working with teachers on grading practices, developing rubrics so that they know when they give an assignment and they want to see 5 particular elements. And in order to get a 5 out of 5 on that rubric, they got to see all 5 of those elements. And they get a 4 if you can see 4, 3 if you see 3 of them. Those are assessments that really get to the heart of learning and making learning much more visible than some of the assessments that will really pull in and I can show you guys. But I think that's the step that I think Jen's talking about as far as I want to see that a kid is, or that our kids are moving on. And I don't have another good system or suggestion than what we currently have, which is SAS. Just the beer summit assessment, which I'm getting talks to us about our assessments. For our,
Just did the trending data on like days, weeks, and Cs with that, get around all the assessment stuff and get us reasonable data.
to some extent, except when a C or a D could be a reflection of whether or not a student has turned in their homework versus whether or not they've learned the learning objectives.
Right.
And that's where we get back to them working with the individual teachers to align the work that they are doing in the classroom, because you could go classroom by classroom. So this was, I haven't dug into.
I mean, in the end, that's gonna be perfect. You have all opt-outs, you have, no homework,
Yeah. But I think it tells a story. I mean, it's one of the big ones that tells a story. And again, I have not dug into our teachers' grade books. I was able to see these with my own kids when they were coming through. And what I've experienced as a parent who is an educator and has gone through many of these discussions, I would experience weighting of grades within my own kids' classrooms that really didn't make any sense. So for instance, they might weight their assessments at 20%, daily quizzes at 30%, and homework at 50%. We can see the majority of the weight for that grade is whether or not a student actually does their work, not whether or not we can actually sit down and they're showing it on a particular exam. And that can change teacher to teacher. And then there's very little consistency often, even teachers in math class, for instance. You've got other staff, and again, this is not reflective of here, but it's giving you a broader generalization where they come into my class on Mondays. For help, I'll give you 5 points of extra credit. We can imagine if you go in every Monday, depending on how the rest of the grades are weighted and the scores are, 5 points, 5 points, 5 points, 5 points. If you're doing your homework and you're turning it in, you don't even have to get A's on your homework, you're probably gonna be in the class just to get the extra credit.
Sure.
So a lot of the work is within, I think, the grading practices within the staff. And I think for us in here, really kind of determination, is there something in addition that we want to see outside of the OSAS, is the dibbles and that kind of on 3 different assessments, or maybe we do 2, one in the winter and one in the spring, because the fall one is kind of a static period when you start your testing off of. Knowing that there are those tests available for middle school, but then you come at a cost. And then there's the conversation about what kind of data can we pull, that if we're worried about a staff member's thoughts or feelings on sharing that data, how do we share that in a way that lessens that? How would you do that?
Process in my head, how would you make that work? Just one data without. I wouldn't like. The teacher would get, think it is offensive. Yeah, the value to give.
So maybe that part, the getting the buy-in from teachers and then not seeing it as an assessment of them is in the our visibility plans at school. If they don't, if they have a misunderstanding of what the 5 of us are trying to do here and who we are, maybe there's some relationship building that needs to happen. Because I even trust 5 people you don't know. That sit in a room with admin and make choices.
And I haven't received any detailed feedback from folks about these maps data.
Is there any additional information in regards to the endowment?
The endowment is really how you choose to interpret the policy. And putting that together. Beyond that, I get into just my own personal opinion.
Okay. So is it based on our interpretation of the policy or potentially based on
Yeah, the interpretation is really.
lawyers' interpretation? I'm just curious if what we would.
No, and the interpretation is going to come down to, I think, section particular to the availability and the how readily available the funds are.
Funds that you would put into an endowment or
The principal part, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, the funds that are in the endowment, how readily available those are, or how you get funds to the endowment.
how readily available the funds would be in the endowment. Yes.
Yeah.
So that's like, if you interpret that. A 6-month CD would be readily available to be able to pull all those funds out if you needed to, but normally were locked up for 6 months, or 6 months not considered readily available. Would be a year, would be. I understand even
Does
right.
readily available be?
Yes. So I think our last report, that was in there, our interest earnings were 657.
You. When I think of an endowment, I think of somebody who has a pile of money and they give it to the district, they create an endowment. And somebody else has another pile, few more piles, and all of a sudden you have a mountain of money.
Yes.
Is that how you're thinking about this?
I am thinking of it in that, unless somebody just happened to walk through the door with one of those piles of money in the near future, that we would come to some agreement and take some portion of our main fund balance to seed this account. And then, yes, it would be open for those type of,
Is that where the issue might lie and where the budget dollars come into an endowment, how readily available those monies are? I would assume if I had $1 million, which I don't, if I had $1 million to give to the district for an endowment,
Yeah.
nobody cares about how readily available those funds are, right?
Correct, yes.
This other money, it seems as though that potentially is where the problem could lie.
And that's where I think that's where I believe it does. The way I believe an endowment works, or I've always seen them work, is that initial principle, there's always a principle
Yeah, it
that
stays,
you do not
no,
touch.
it stays forever,
Yes,
right,
and it is only the interest that you get to
Right.
budget and touch.
right.
So. But it's still. Up to the board on how to interpret that, there's somebody else that at some point can come in and say. We feel like this does not match up with this policy in regards to availability.
Well, I think that would come. So the way in which I just interpreted an endowment, I don't believe your policy allows you to do. Because what you're saying is that money that we put into the endowment, so if you said we're gonna put $500,000 into the endowment. With the idea that we're either gonna reinvest the interest or spend the interest. And that will be a yearly decision, you decide what that process would be. That $500,000 according to your current policy is not available.
Create like what we did for track numbers. Right? And it's not like officially an endowment, it's a set aside. Or is that not?
Going to and you're talking about turning it into a reserve, like.
Yeah, just like create a reserve that we call an endowment and just be putting money in that and then spending interest or leaving interest in there kind of thing.
Yeah, we need to get Sherry weigh in more on that, because reserves have some special rules. As far as that, what type of reserves you can set up, I don't. Just give that a check by here, but I do not believe you can set up a reserve for that. Okay, yeah. But, sure.
and would it be outside of our. Because we're. Our minimum that we wanna keep ending fund is 20%, right?
We don't, I'm not aware of a policy or resolution that has been customary. Year after year after year, that, yeah, we look at it 20%. And
So we will, so stay even well above that 20%. That's still. Yes,
those days are, I mean, they're ending. That was the March budget, and that's certainly not being able to build possessions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next one on here was the increasing in visibility and presence at school and community events. Was that Rusty that mentioned that, or was that?
Mine was the community event ones, I just, mainly maybe self-motivated, like, I just know I always busy and sometimes this is put on the back burner, opportunities coming up. I feel like it'll be a good priority, so I just thought it would be good for myself and the rest of the board to try as best we can to be more involved in school, that we're trying to do our best to serve them, so.
That kind of flows into the presence, increased presence with the Education Foundation, Mr. Club,
It was a little different, that was mine. Honestly, I hadn't really thought through it very well with regards to the mission statement. And I also probably thinking through it, I suspect that I would change my mind a little bit on how each of those three organizations might contribute to those goals of the mission statement. But on the one hand, I was thinking more from just a political perspective, having the board more invested in those organizations probably would do well for the district, as the organizations feel value. But beyond that, we can speak to the foundation more than I can the other two. What they provide to the district absolutely seems to me falls in line with these goals. The things that they spend the money on within the district. Do those things. At least it seems to me that. So. I don't know that it's. Well, we're gonna find out, he's ranked a little later on. I'm not sure it's the highest and best use of our time or energy, I don't know. But it does seem to me that as I weigh these against the mission, there is a role that those organizations play in the achievement of our goals. How much of a role and how impactful, I don't know. That, I guess in a roundabout way, it could be linked to increasing the visibility and presence at the school, but it feels to me like the organizational impact is more direct to the students. For sure.
Not to get too far out of ourselves, just for consideration when we're getting ready to rank these, did you have any idea in mind of what that would look like? Okay. Was hoping maybe you had some ideas.
Well,
Because I find value in it.
Yeah, I guess the only thing, I mean, I did mention that at a minimum, inviting them to a board meeting once a year might be a good idea. Beyond that,
Yeah, because see, I'm glad I asked, because my thought is like, are we sending potentially a board member, on a regular basis to attend their meetings?
Yeah.
So I think, maybe what you're talking about, what you just said, maybe sounds a little bit more realistic.
Yeah.
So, not that I necessarily don't think there would be value in the board member going, but that's still okay.
that feels tricky.
Yeah.
Give you something like a concrete example, sprinkler board, I think Eugene is the same. They will generally have community meetings or groups that they've collectively kind of been involved with for years, or they will go through a process of adding or taking off those community groups, and then they will divide those up. So as an example, they would take, one might take if this were the groups, one might take PTO, one might take booster, one might take the Education Foundation. And then they would attend those for the month and come back and report for everyone else.
And then, sorry, Drew, we kind of skipped over you and your visibility of the school community events. Any additional thoughts on strategies, I guess. I guess the other two basically. Well, I don't know, I don't remember if I actually said anything specifically like the culture and climate survey, but I definitely want to talk about line up with students from the equity work session. And I know that. In previous, discussions or documents, Jim has suggested, that the culture and climate survey could be something that's generated when, once we have, and what's the term that we're using for that? I'm sorry, I keep forgetting.
The district equity committee.
Yeah, equity committee, and I think that, when it comes to the survey in general, I think it does make sense to wait till, that committee, and I think that would be a much more, appropriate group of, individuals to sort of unnecessarily the school board, I think it'd be a lot more meaningful if it's not that way, but I do think there would be value in at least following up with the students from the equity work session. And that's something that I don't know if we even need to set a goal necessarily to accomplish. However, I would like to follow up, have a follow-up discussion with that in regards to the concerns that those students brought up last time they were here. And steps that we are or will be or working towards taking to try to mitigate stuff. So obviously not necessarily the conversation they have right now, but that's where my head is at.
I think there's value too for the climate survey outside. They'll get that, just like how it's both students and teachers. How they feel about how the culture and climate is, and not necessarily in regards to activity specifically, but just in general, you know.
There was one done last fall.
At the middle high.
With that one that the students did.
We still have the data. Yeah, so the, it was work that Garth had done, collected the information, went back to the teachers with the data, and then they had conversations around what the data told them, what they're hearing from the students. That's part of it overall, like the social emotional learning that we are doing.
We're gonna do that to make sure we're not just reading the same.
Sure.
items.
Yeah, I know that Clarissa was offering an opportunity to go through some of that data with board members individually. Jen, I believe you followed up with her on that. I totally skipped doing it. Never got around to taking her up on that. But just to throw it out there, maybe at some point. If the board, and also background admin feels it would have value to review that information with the board during a meeting at some point this year.
That's last, man.
I believe it was at the beginning of, last school year.
Maybe it's the same, maybe it's not. It was the climate a year ago.
Well, I will say, having been a part of going through that with Clarissa and the equity lens kids here in the room. The data was, I think, was good and seemingly accurate, but I got a whole lot more out of sitting in the room with those kids. There's quite a bit of nuance that you can't get from a survey.
If we were to do that again, we would have to come up with some more specific protocols. That got too personal. We were bordering violating our policies around information about individuals.
With that survey that was done this year, or with the conversation with the students?
This conversation with students.
Mm. I think. I don't know, this, at least for me, would be beneficial for me just to, have some more clarification in regards to that. That concern. Of, maybe some point you could just follow up. When you have time.
Yeah, it's just, it's using, being critical of people and using their names or using enough identifiable information that you know who they are.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just trying to remember more details about what was discussed, but.
Yeah. Which you can, I mean, there's protocols and there's ways to be able to do that. There's pre-teaching that happens before you work with the group and they kind of just sort of get what are your main points. And I think that was, we heard what the main points were, but we didn't have protocols to kind of stop and it kept going. And that almost kind of turned into storytelling opportunities, and we know way to also start to vet that information. For accuracy, when you start to listen to the language, sometimes it gets really vague. There's not a lot of detail that, you know, whether or not it's first-hand information, second-hand information, third-hand information. Yeah,
So it sounds like if we were to proceed with that, that it would be more than just inviting them to another board meeting, that there would definitely be. So follow up with them by admin first.
yeah, and there's definitely protocols to go through and work to do with the students, like, and I think that Chris has got a leadership group going on right now, and identifying, you know, from students, what are your concerns? How do you leave names out? How do you be detailed about the concerns so that they can actually turn them into actionable items, what things that are in them we take on? And so much of that can be, I think a leadership group from the school is so important because if it's student led, it's got so much more weight behind it. Number of little things that we don't always make those connections to, but we brought up in our last board updates, the, you know, backpacks, teachers spending together and decide on cell phone, make sure it's consistent across classrooms. And those are great examples, so you can get on the same page as far as what the expectations are. And have a huge impact on culture, which always those pieces will happen. And sign in the corner of the school and the balcony. So start to empower and find out distinction things. They're looking at recording. It's a good one that Springfield High started one many years ago called, to say another word. Oh, use another word campaign. And that went throughout the entire district. That was use another word. It was led by the students. And the idea of some language was so bad, and so they started a campaign and made it normalized to tell everybody use another word, which is meant and something other than the word. The Blue Ribbon campaign came out of Springfield High as well. Yep. And school violence. Sounds like a church song. How many kids you meeting with right now?
Leadership class?
Yeah.
There's 20.
Right. Yeah. And you've already gotten feedback from a couple of people, it sounds like, as far as just the impact and feeling of students having a voice within that meeting space and sharing, learning, I think, like a true leadership type of a role.
That's a great class for you guys just to come visit, just to come pop in, you and I talked a little bit about it, but, just to pop in and kind of introduce yourself. I think it has the freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior class officers, plus some at-large people in there as well. So, get a chance to see everyone.
On that note, I think if part of some of these goals and things have come out as well, so we've got a portrait of the graduate work that we're doing, so we're gonna use that class as far as the student feedback goes. And then I've actually reached out and invited Education Foundation, the Booster Club, and PTO to come for the community event as well. So making an effort to connect with them directly.
Okay. Any further discussion about the goals that we have listed here?
It's the highest. Six is the lowest.
One is, you know, it's the most important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The highest, six is the lowest. So I'm really gonna skew the data.
We start all over, we couldn't follow instructions.
The point of the both reports. Is that accurate?
The, yes, the lowest average.
Yeah. Looks like increasing our visibility and presence at school and community events is, oh, I'm sorry, no, assessment data was the winner. Sorry. Then the next closest one, was increasing our presence at school and community events. Followed by following up with the students from the equity work session. Conducting the and
So we didn't double check.
no, I have the numbers, right? I'm just-
Ribbon.
All right, so let's do this again. This is first place. That's the assessment data. Visibility and presence of school and community events, second. Following up with students from the equity work session is third. Also by increasing our presence with the foundation, Mr. Bill and PTO. And there's a tie between the climate survey and the data development.
So the next piece is really about discussing the top ideas, and what I think of in this next piece is sometimes what can happen when you go from somebody who presents an idea and they've got their idea about it, and now it's just like people coming together. Idea can sometimes more. And that's why we'll come back and do another little strong tool if needed. But it's really to start to think about what is the pros and cons, what kind of things do we need to know, what are the resources, how they align, what be some challenges. With this item, so we start to get a bigger, I guess, picture as far as the group. So we actually sit down and start to actually write like the goals and set and objectives, that we will be clear, or should be more clear.
I will say in general, I sat down and tried to, write some form of a goal for all 6 of these at home, and I found it is incredibly difficult for me to write a goal on work that I'm not going to do. Like, I'm a support staff, I'm not like in there, and I've never written a goal like that was kind of dependent on other people to follow through as well. So I will leave that for what it is. I'm having trouble, like, understanding leaning on other people, perhaps, and like, I don't know how to write a goal for something I'm not, the increasing presence that I can wrap my mind around, because that depends on me, us, then, but especially the assessment one, like, there's just so many players in the game that I don't have, that are their own entity and have their own autonomy, that it seems hard for me to put words to something that we are going to do, unless we're, you know, we supported them in doing this.
I guess push you back up to the policy level, because this will tell us what we're going to do around assessment day. As far as what you may want to see, and I would maybe even suggest, if we're not clear yet on what it means or need more information, maybe that assessment data goal changes. And as an example, we use our 2 next work sessions to bring information together to learn more about data, or bringing somebody from Hugo or outside.
The thing that has frustrated me, and I know it's frustrated you. All of the assessment data, so few of them seem to tell you, I get a P&L every month, and I know where we are. And either we gotta do something or we don't, and we can decide what we're gonna do based on that immediate feedback of that those previous 30 days. And that seems so hard in this environment, to be able to get that kind of feedback, where we would be able to, at the policy level, be able to shift things to make an impact. So, I mean, I rated it number one, I have no idea. Just like, how, it seems like the most important thing that we could possibly be doing here is to know how we're doing. Like, I can't imagine anything more important as a school board member. Like, we need to know how we're doing, and yet, I mean, even the earlier conversation about the data that's 2 and 3 years old, that's absolutely gonna help. I mean, that's probably not fair. It's not very, that's it. I just, and then even the data on attendance and all. And then the opt-out, there's all these variables that make it, it feels like almost impossible to assess anything in real time.
And even trying to look at a trend, like. OSAS is a thing, it has numbers, but there's opt-out, there's COVID, there's all of these factors and. You know, in the same time that we take the OSAS data in, it's got all these asterisks with it. And so it just, and it's a year link, so it just doesn't. I don't think that's gonna get us where we wanna be.
Yeah, if we're, maybe we should get think outside the box and encourage. Different to think outside the box on the way to track progress. Either by grades or groups or years or whatever it is. It's not some normal system that they can just buy off the shelf or whatever, just. What would be intuitive you would like to see that we could.
It seems like there should already be something in the curriculum club, right? Like, I didn't buy anything else. Who was supposed to?
There is, and it will give you again, it's just like the assessment data you're looking at right now, if you're looking at it, just a test of a particular unit, it's one data point in time. And the rest of what you're getting at is just the complexity of teaching that our teachers deal with every day, which is all of the variables. You've got 25 kids in your class, and every kid has got their own set of variables, and not just one or two. Multitude from the time you get up that morning till what happens during lunch, what happens on the bus. And that's even when we do our evaluation with our teachers, it was a frustrating conversation every single year when you go through it, it's that learning goals. And to get them to these point of sitting down and understanding who their students are, what are the accommodations and modifications, who's tagged, who's identified for special education, develop your goals. You might do a pre-assessment, you do a post-assessment, and then you get down towards that halfway year, the mark where they're sitting down with the administrator. With the basis of it is growth minded, so it's looking at your data and making decisions. Have you made changes along the way? Do you need to make changes to get better results? And it's never a kind of one and done. Just every day is kind of a presentation of new information. You said interruptions. A student that you worked with on the day before, you need to see it again the next day, and they didn't show up, or they're gone for a week on vacation, or sick, or out for athletics, or lots and lots of variables.
I'll agree with Rusty, and I think it's important, and I don't really know how to get there, but I do have trust in the people that we have working on our campus, that they know how to get there. And I don't know that I really want us to be the decider of how to get there, at least not solo. I think that would be somewhat foolish having 0 educators over here. But I also think I want to put out whatever we decide to do in whatever timeline, I want it to be thoughtful. Also understanding that probably not going to be perfect right out of the gate, and that it can be edited, changed as time goes by and we see what works and what does not.
Need more guidance.
Yeah, I don't want it to come across like, like I'm not in favor of this, but I just wanna offer the perspective. But from a public servant perspective. And how that I've done for 18 years now. And having discussions with people who are coming from the business sector, from the private sector, and looking at the public sector and trying to apply the same stuff that they do in the business sector to the private sector, I mean, it's the public sector. And it's a lot of the times it's trying to square peg into a round hole. And when we talk about thinking outside the box, when we talk about something that hasn't been tried, the problem you're going to run into that I foresee is what we're looking at that point is not something that's necessarily reflected with best practice. It's not something that's been reviewed by anybody other than potentially what we have in this district. And so we're potentially making decisions as a board based on this information that hasn't gone through that kind of process. And while I understand that there is, I understand and appreciate and have myself distrust, because in people who in that system that reviews these kind of assessments and talks about best practice, and we're skeptical because it feels like we keep trying to do the same thing and nothing changes. And we're continuing to struggle with education in this state, but there's still value in that. And I think that that's just something to keep in mind when we're talking about this, is that if I'm a board, we're actually talking about making concrete decisions or holding Jim, because he's our one employee, accountable based on this kind of testing. We could potentially end up in a situation where we make things get worse and they come in and say, well, how did we get here? And it's like, well, we were making decisions based on something that's not been validated. And as 5 people who have no experience in education, we need to be really careful about how we proceed with this. Because as Jim said, there's a lot of complexity here. And what sometimes seems as common sense doesn't necessarily reflect best practice that's been established by the people actually doing the job. I'll leave it at that. In terms of the goals that we would come up for this, it seems like this is clearly, I mean, it's fortunate Janelle's not here, but this is clearly the most important thing to the board right now. I think my other thought is that we're going to need to be really patient in this, and I don't know that necessarily we should be expecting to start doing some kind of assessment this school year. I don't think that that's realistic. My thoughts on goals would be along the lines of asking Jim and the admin team to come back at a certain point with some recommendations. But what I mean, Jim, you mentioned stuff that we would have to buy. And perhaps something that's more simple that's just developed at the or a general example of something that could be developed at the district, and pros and cons of using something like that. But I don't think that's what we should, I'm not saying that's how it should be understood.
All of us in a reasonable timeline for spend. an implementation timeline that's realistic.
But I think you're, the conversation I'm hearing is coming up with a goal. So I'm seeing remnants of it, that the goal is starting with still in, I'm thinking of like, still in this group discussion, so we need to have some more concrete examples. So we can have further conversation about pros and cons, potential challenges, and then how they align with the overall organizational goals. And so we still have, we can just start with, I think, maybe even the next work session to come back. They'll give me plenty of time to go out and look at sort of what else might be out there. Pull our superintendents, see what they are doing, run some of this work. There's a couple of organizations that are used locally. One of them you might think is in Bethel called Studer. But they're a little more complex and comprehensive. But I also think one of the cons is that I think we develop something that is quick and easy now. We're not going to have the data, and we're going to be having the same conversation kind of over again. And then we're going to find, okay, you're going to be a year into this or 2 years into this, and you're not going to have that baseline data, and you're going to say, well, I wish we would have compared it, but been mindful of the data we compare year after year. I see that there's still a lot of potential for development in there. We just gotta be ready, right?
Well, I think that just, it potentially needs to be a different, the goal needs to be just, or the. Make a goal be to work towards identifying additional assessment data that the district can use in the future to track student progress. Something along those lines. Because whatever we come up with, like you're saying, it needs to be, we need to make sure that it's something that we can use long term. And will actually give us accurate information in terms of how we want to use it. And I think it's also important to have further discussion about how that information, how the board is expected to use that information, because some of the stuff that's been talked about is pretty detailed stuff that is not the responsibility of the board.
But is it our responsibility to provide it to our instructors?
No. It's our responsibility to ask him to follow up on that. And I think if, and I understand and have experienced the same frustration that you have in terms of what a feeling value of serving on the board. But I think that until the policies change, until there's some change in however it works, law or policy, that we have to be really mindful of that relationship. And be respectful of those boundaries when it comes to working with Jim with the admin team.
But it is our. It seems to me. We're supposed to be hearing whether or not the district, in particular Jim in this case. How is it doing? Right?
Well, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about how the information is used.
Right. No, I hear it.
Specific stuff in regards to.
I guess I'm trying to delineate between. Micromanaging and listening to the health of the district. And deciding whether the direction is right or not.
Yeah, that's much more generalized than some of the other examples.
Yeah. And so it feels to me like what we're asking, I'm asking for, is a way to know what direction are we headed? Are we headed in the right direction or are we headed in the wrong direction? Some way to assess that. to be able to say, like your husband said at the end of the year, what did you accomplish? Well, we were headed in the right direction, and here's why. That to me feels like what 15 plan, perhaps, or at least I would.
Yeah.
Right?
And we have, so that, those are our 5 longitudinal targets that are directly tied to our integrated guidance plan, which was derived from information that I put together and past information I put together. The way in which budgets were already happening around services within the schools. And then we just more detailed that plan into the objectives. And that, so that is it, there is alignment there. From community input to the objectives, to our funding, to the 5 longitudinal targets. Yeah. That is definitely there. The others, I think, what you talk about, like the assessment data, and this is where it's, I can bring, Chris can definitely come back and say, yep, my science class gave a pre-test and a post-test. Here's your results. I think that's going to give you what you want, because it's not going to tell you any more than what the kid's got to do or not, which is essentially what it's going to boil down to. They got 80 out of 100. That's a B. The student got 75 out of 100. That's a C.
I think when you consider that example and apply it to the goal that our mission statement, we're talking about high levels of academic and personal achievement, to be ready for post-secondary excellence, and to be productive citizens. I don't know that necessarily that kind of information tells us as much as we'd like about whether or not that's happening.
So when we look at some assessments, this might be a different way to look at it then. And maybe the portrait, graduate portrait work will get there as well, but I think they like the KPIs, the performance indicators. What would be indicators for all of you that would signal that we are going in the right direction? So for instance, with a graduation, a student graduating on time, and for your graduation rate, we want data about how many of our students are going on to a 2-year college, 4-year college, or the workforce, or maybe they're delayed in going into community college.
Oh, and more important, how are they doing there?
Or service. Yeah, some of that becomes a little more difficult.
I know. But I mean, honestly, that's what you care about. I don't care how many kids are in college. I want to know how they do.
Yeah.
How they do it at work. They got the job as a plumber. They graduated from FFA and they got whatever. Yeah, I mean, that's actually what we care about.
Yeah, and I hate to say it, there are those connective data points that are taken. They won't give you that information though.
Well, I'm not saying you can get it,
Yeah.
but as I'm sitting here thinking, I mean, the harsh reality is if you're a parent, I mean, all this stuff that's happening during school matters clearly, but what actually matters is what happens when they leave. How did they do when they enrolled at the U of O? They started taking classes and they're either failing or they're thriving. When they go to work for the builder, because they learned how to build a mobile home or whatever it is. How's that going for them? I mean, it just seems to me like, as much as I care about the experience here, and I do, and all that stuff is what ultimately, I think, largely determines how well it goes. It's how well it goes after the fact. We all wish we knew, like the last 20 years of students here, how they doing?
From a data standpoint, then that becomes like the county, right? Yeah, the state, and there is information available. It does not narrow it down to say how Pleasant Hill students are doing out there. And we've heard clearly from the main workforce that employers are terribly unhappy with I want to say the skills, but they're like the soft skills that graduates are bringing to the workforce. They're not only showing up on time and staying through your shift, but coming the next day, the next day, the next day.
No, and that's where your work around our kids here every day or
Yeah.
not. And if they are here, they get here on time, or they 10 minutes after the bell. I mean, that is where they learn that stuff, and I get that, and that's why I think this stuff is so important, but. Yeah, I agree with that assessment of the Wayne workforce. I experience it every day. I'll tell you what, though, the kids that come out of Angela's program, I'd hire any of them. Any of them. Because they can learn. I mean, they can learn what matters when you get out into the workforce.
And that's, you're really kind of hitting on the year 2 work of the graduate, the portrait graduate work. The first year is really putting together what we will envision, and the second year, gets down into it. Really kind of how we measure that. Through it.
I am curious, that portrait with the graph, I don't know enough about it yet to know, but it feels like that might be answering some of our questions here around this. And it might be addressing some of this,
It's bringing alignment to,
yeah.
definitely. Yeah. But I still don't, there's the general understanding, I think, and we're kind of getting, but I just want to say, this is kind of the process and protocol when you hear assessment data and you start to throw out really what this looks like on visions with the same idea of, general, honestly say, but I don't really know what that is, because I don't do that work, so I'm going to need help in doing it, and how that can then kind of morph into your actual goal. And obviously those goals change with time. The worst thing I hate to see kind of happens when we end up not sticking with a goal long enough. And with the understanding that your goal may just morph a little bit. And that's what I think we're, when I first started John's frustrations, it feels like we're always chasing something a little bit different, which is different style of education. So there are a couple of programs. The one, the student education, is a more comprehensive. I think Bethel is using it right now. It's pretty detailed and comprehensive, but also the lines, I believe, these goals. And developing the outcomes. It's a much more broader, I'll find out more about it, but I can come back with some ideas. If you want to spend the next time at the work session. I also got a message from John. He did think it was 7 o'clock. In the meantime, though, I think we can still come with similar assessment data, including Ds and Fs, sample data that we don't even really have to share necessarily where it's coming from as far as the classroom, but to give it a taste of what's happening in the classrooms. I'm wondering if there's even room to be able to share an exemplar of like a professional learning goal and a student learning goal in the process, and have make that connection as far as what the staff does. Yeah, in the evaluation process. She brings some light to it. It doesn't bring you guys any closer to the classroom, obviously, but
I think it would be beneficial too, you mentioned that something coming to you low. I think that kind of stuff, just to hear from, people who do education, but not necessarily from the admin team to come and talk about that stuff, that they be helpful.
yeah, possibly. I can work with Suzanne. She might have some contacts. And having somebody that bridge the gap between the PhD research world and what we're doing here. Where they want to control every single variable. Research, but yes, absolutely.
So, need specific, measurable goals for increasing our visibility and presence. Do we want to combine this? Do we want to, I mean, I know we talked about maybe doing the top 2. we want to try to combine this with the foundation boosters, PTO. Does that seem like that would be too big? That's how I'm feeling.
I feel there's a lot of overlap between
Yeah.
community events and the group.
Yeah.
That's how I'm feeling as well. Yeah, the cost.
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
When we, first one's a little bit easier, I mean, both of us in, give, examples. Ideas of how we could increase our presence with, more interactions with the foundation boosters, you know. Whether that's inviting them to attend a meeting once a year, or it's having board member, sending a board member to go to these meetings. How often? Thoughts there? So it's part.
As far as inviting them to us, actually, they need no invitation, they knock on the door, but I have a hard time going to one of these groups and asking them to come if there's not something on the agenda that's related in some way, shape, or form to them. I would like to think that all of these groups do come up in the agenda at some point during the year, but to invite the boosters to one of our meetings, it's just enrollment report, financial statement.
I guess I was,
I think they would have a hard time coming back.
yeah. But if they had an opportunity at least once a year to come here and specifically ask the board what they need from them. Maybe they don't need anything, they decline the invitation.
Mhm.
But I've heard enough over the years, geez, I wish they would just. Okay, well, if I were you, I'd go sit right there in that chair and ask. And
Would it be a simpler entry if we went to their meeting and they could discuss with one of us there? And
well, I do know that. You did go to one of the.
I'm not, the only one is, booster, and I've been to PTO.
But I think that. Just being there. Matters. That's all. Just knowing that you know they exist.
All three of these groups were thrilled to be asked to become part of the, Fourth of the Graduate.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard right about it.
Yeah.
So that's all I was thinking, is just giving them an invitation, and they probably decline them right away. And then to be able to hear from their perspective, what can the board do to be helpful?
Yeah, that's kind of what I had in mind, what I figured I would go to, that like it's a specific, point of the agenda for whatever meeting they're coming to, and I would think we would do like one at a time, well. Yeah, one at a time. Just thinking out loud at this point, and it would be a specific agenda item early on in the meeting, where we give them basically the floor, and it's like a very specific public comment period, but where we've extended the invitation, and I think half of it, if not more, is just sending the invitation, would be my guess. But not expecting them to sit through the entire.
Right,
time, and they're welcome to, we invite them to stay and observe. And I can understand, I agree with your perspective too, that this is open to the public, you can watch online, you can, our email addresses are there, you can send a comment directly through the school district, but I think sometimes, extending the invitation that, means a lot just by itself, so. But I think that I agree that if we did that, it would be in conjunction with also attending these meetings, so I'm just curious how that would look like, how often we think would be. Sending a board member there every month, if it's every quarter.
No,
Once or twice a year.
yeah,
Okay.
Beginning and end.
Yeah.
I'm glad I asked.
yeah, yeah. Got them all, yeah.
Okay. I like that, beginning of the school year or toward the beginning of the school year, and then, halfway through the school year. Like that. Gives us a minute, and it's supposed to wait at the end, or. we like to do things, yeah. And then what's the method for, I mean, do we? Just ask for a volunteer from the board, or do we?
I think Tom said he wanted to go to all these.
Yeah, so you-
Well, if we were to,
Disagrees, pick up.
if we were to include. I don't know if it's appropriate to include them or not, but the shack and the 15, that gives us 5. Education Foundation Booster, PTO, shack and FIP. And we have a fantasy draft, and you get whatever group for the year, and you go to a couple of meetings, whatever, I mean, in that general winter, springtime, but really whenever it fits into your schedule. And then probably change it up the next school year, so,
So it's beginning of the year, like a charge.
yeah.
All right, then we're gonna do our. Draft again.
Yeah.
I like it.
Where's the fit, shack booster outfit?
That it's not 4 of us telling one person you have to go to this meeting, and it turns out it's their birthday or something.
Oh. And then it would be on those people, on all of us, to give like Jim a heads up which meeting we're. Enough advance warning which meeting we're going to, so that he has, time to. Include or report back to the rest of the board in a future board meeting.
Yeah,
We
that
always
can
got
be,
that more communication thing.
yeah, that can be.
Just the board communication.
All we need to know is before the agenda went out, like into a particular meeting. Just say, hey, include me under board communication as a reminder.
And how often for those other groups, they, like, there's the PTO, everybody know?
You only monthly.
Once a month on a Tuesday, and then we alternate an afternoon to an evening time. And all of those are up to date on the district calendar, so you guys can sift through there and see dates and events and things.
We'll go through and capture. Meeting times for those. Shack, we're currently looking for somebody to replace Beth, so that's resigned from the leadership piece of that. Booster House, I think it's time the foundation, so the 15 is 3 times a year. At most, and they are doing work like this next meeting will be specific to the portrait of graduate work. And that's right after school, 3:30. If we do until. We've got classified negotiations coming up as well.
Really already.
You mean like going to their meeting or? what do
To
you mean?
be on the negotiations team. Which might be, for that might take, I would say if it was gonna take place of replace something, it'd be like the 15th. Yeah.
When does that start?
We will. Just depends on how soon they want to start, it's sometime January, right?
Oh, so this school?
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, it expires June 30th.
What's a way for us to measure strategies and a way to measure or increasing our visibility at the school and events? And I think we just gotta keep in mind. If we're doing this as a role of board member, what that means, what coming on campus during the school day.
Yeah, so Shack generally meets a little bit late in the afternoon, and it is also usually by Zoom as well. To get that up in the office, like I said, PTO alternates back and forth. Booster clubs evening, foundations evening. It was generally usually start about 3:30. Negotiations, which sounds like very much for meetings.
Sorry, I was already to the part about board members being at the school and or community events. Just soliciting and the ideas on your strategies on how to accomplish that and then how to measure it. Or what we want that goal actually to be, like starting out there, we've attended X amount of.
Everybody shoot for a
Events.
percentage of
Yeah,
coverage
yeah,
or-
yeah. And so that I think that's gonna be a little bit harder of a goal to. Monitor. From my perspective, I think something else as ideas.
There's
And
also,
also strategies for how to actually accomplish that, considering. Day jobs.
yeah, and some of the other pieces that are coming up, so. If you want, and I think about capturing this through the board communication, so being able to come back and actually report something out. It's a great way to capture it, but we've also got our coastal region meeting that is coming up. And Jen's gonna do the SBA conference in November as well, so it's expanding it to. Full look like.
I think that our building principals do a good job with their monthly report of here's what we have coming up and. I think we can bring up those reports. And then-
What would help me, and I don't know if it's realistic, but I appreciate those reports and hearing those things. It's very hard for me, harder for me, just given my life that. It's way, put it this way, it's way easier if somebody calls and asks me, will you attend? Whatever. I can make the time and figure out how to do that. It's super hard to just randomly hear about something and then, oh my God, it's just not gonna happen. So I don't know whether there are opportunities within any of the schools where there's a specific event where a board member it might be nice for a board member to be. And to have that information and specifically be asked would actually be helpful. Maybe I can't do it, but if I can, I want to. I don't know if that's helpful or not. That's how I would work better for me to achieve this goal.
When's our career day? We got.
Career fair?
Yeah,
That's coming up. I just looked at it just now. It's like, October and October. Is that what you're talking about?
yeah. And this might totally, I mean, fit in a business owner community, we've got a career fair and. It's work.
Yeah.
Here, definitely.
Would it be helpful to have like a
Board member
list of events?
October 30th.
And if evening events are better for you, like the elementary has a series of several evening events throughout the year. Our winter concert, we have each grade level puts on a concert, we have our with a museum night, like if you guys had that calendared out, because we have that all calendared out, and you had a list where you could plan for that. Would that be helpful?
And we have a shared, calendar that you just be added to.
Okay.
And maybe just adding on, Rusty said like, picking out 3 or 4 that you think would be beneficial to have a board member there, that we could focus on, that would be that, yeah, like, would be more important.
Job upon this Friday.
Oh, it
It's
is.
during the day though. Yes. Come run with us.
I dealt with them all the time.
I know. You guys are.
So we talked about, I think, trying to measure the scope as well. Is it? Do you want to attempt to then to have some board communication once per month? Not necessarily once per, because some months we just have like the one board meeting. But for somebody's, and there could be still multiple, but like somebody's reporting back once per month.
I think between evening events and these meetings and stuff, we should have somebody doing something.
Also want to make sure that we, I don't know if we do that now or in the near future, as part of this, to make sure we decide on something to do for teacher appreciation. We've done in years past, which we did last year.
Exactly. What's the end of the year?
Yeah, it's towards the end of the year. Or like, just in advance, if it's do ice cream again. Or if you think of something else, but. Yeah. I mean, that's what, we did that 2 years, or the year before this year, so I guess calendar year last year. That was along the lines of what the board had been doing for years before that, so we don't necessarily. There's something teachers would more appreciate, or if it's just a district to begin with, they have a better idea, but just spending being at school. And in some fashion. I like the idea of the serving the ice cream, not necessarily just because the ice cream, but serving those who are serving our. So there's something that feels good about that.
We'll get that back in front of you, plenty of time to make that decision.
May 5th through 9th this year.
And there was also the email that Jim sent out for a prior, a former board member in regards to something in the newsletter from the board, and that seems pretty obvious. So like, as the board chair, that's something that should have just been on my radar to do, period. So I'm gonna own that. When is the next one for that?
January.
Okay. So, I mean, better late than never, we can develop something. Within the next newsletter.
We work together then, so we don't duplicate or that information as well, it might include, or we do a more updates on.
Sure. I don't expect it to be anything like long, but just. Something that puts the board out there. It's another thing that says, hey, we're here, and if nothing else, here's maybe like this actually may really help. I could just talk briefly about some of the goals that the board is coming up with. Just feel like we're doing more meaningful work. Right, as board members, just keep it simple. But that's I didn't have any idea of doing anything significant. Anybody has any thoughts on that? Otherwise. Okay, if you think of something else, maybe I could put in there, just let me know if that should be included.
Okay, so I'm gonna come back to the next work session with more discussion around the assessment. I did want to go in that goal. And then second one is we'll continue to develop out the link that's got our district events and the calendars. Part of this is being meaningful, I think, within our agendas, as far as taking some time and actually opening that up. And that might be a time to assign as well, or say, if I've got that, I'm ready to agree with it, and then once a month. We have the communication and communicating back what events we got to, what we experienced in the community. But we don't want Chris's high school leadership team meetings. And
Need to
then,
come up with a measure.
and then more deliberate, I think, from what I heard this, maybe from Chris and Brent, more deliberate about saying, hey, there's a specific invite.
Yeah. Then you just kind of comment about how I like to measure it. I want to make sure we follow all that before we move on.
Oh, as far as the coming back to the next work sessions, I don't have a great ideas to share.
Okay. Do we feel like that's covered? Want more discussion there? Good. And I just wanted to address really quick, because I mentioned, earlier that I don't know if necessarily needs to be even a goal, but just get the boards. I mean, I have the score here, but get the board's thought on separate from these goals, just figuring out a way to check in, or at least offer to check in with the students we heard from last time, and make sure it's done in a more appropriate manner. Well, if that's getting too far afield, because we wanted to keep these kind of concise, or we felt that would be meaningful to follow up on.
What's the timeline for having that equity committee formed?
Oh, it will not, yeah, so I think it's May. Yeah, kind of plan on bringing names for you guys to approve in May. And we've got some process work that we need to start. If we can get to it over the summer, otherwise they won't start their work until September.
I think that's too far out. Wait on that.
I would agree with that, yeah.
Jim, do you have an idea about a way? I feel like I would assume those kids left here thinking, hey, they're gonna do something, or they're gonna say something, something's gonna happen. Maybe not, that would be my assumption if I were one of them. And so how could we let them know that we're thoughtful of what we heard? And I don't know, I mean, that road and come up with a different agenda. It just seems for us to be able to somehow communicate, we heard you, and we care.
Right.
It was shocking. I mean, the whole thing was shocking. So,
I don't know.
And I think going off of what you said, kind of hints at what Jim was saying earlier, where, you know, we want to make sure that from now on, we're getting that kind of input, that it's done through. Yeah, well, and then like you said, a protocol, so that what we're hearing, we're actually a little more, we're a little more, sure that about, so we're getting a better picture of what actually is occurring. Jim said we're source monitoring and also asking for a little bit more thought as opposed to just off the cuff, so. So I think it would be really good to hear from them again, if possible, through that filter. So we get a much better idea of just really what it's like. And it's not necessarily, like Jim said, just making sure we're guarding against something they heard from somebody else, or storytelling, and making sure that it's meaningful and not just a visceral reaction, I guess is what I'm driving at, because there's a visceral reaction, but there's also like, well, let's do something about it.
I think one of the students graduated.
I think that I was trying to think of the students.
Yeah. I think one of the students graduated, yeah, it might just be starting, I think, at the high school and having like Chris and Kyle sit down and Caleb, I mean, with those students again, it's what you told us. When we last met, how do you feel like things have changed, have they changed, what are you doing right now? And almost kind of do just a little mini, finding survey. With those students and let us get that information first and see how we know. Because it might even be in a reporting type of function that could come back to you.
Yeah. Looking at this, photo quality, again, everyone's amazing in getting it set up for us. We feel like there's anything else to do tonight for us to keep us on track. You guys feel like we need to do any more work, be more specific, especially in regards to like the second goal. Or do we feel good about where things are at this point? And I also want to hear from Jim in that regard. You feel like there's enough direction there.
I believe this is, it's, I think just acknowledging. Which sometimes it's easy to sit down and put time, like, we're gonna spend 50 minutes on this, 50 minutes on this, and we're gonna come up with a nice little plan, everything's gonna fall into place. Just acknowledge that it did, and it's messy, and but we're in a different place than we were. a month ago. Better.
We're even 2 hours.
We're not ready to vote on that.
I don't think we have anything concrete yet to vote on.
That's not at all. No, I just wanted to make sure we felt like we had made enough progress tonight, or if there's still some more work we wanted to do tonight. That's what I was driving at.
And I would even say this in terms of just, education.
Board education.
No, education is in, the model of education, and how things move so slowly sometimes. I would refuse, like, we've got some action steps as far as the communication and the outreach as far as the community. I think that would involve as well. In terms, I think, the other goal, it would not surprise me if we were developing a goal, be ready to be developed and a little bit tighter goal around that for the 25-26 school day, where I can see we could spend a year coming together work sessions to talk about that. And then have what we think is going about with them moving forward. It's a big one. This one, that's mine.
We're just not stagnant. Acknowledging it's important.
Well, I mean, I think that's why it's great that the way we ended up coming across this is because we're focusing on goals that the board is passionate about, and so I just don't see us letting that go. I'm pretty confident that that's not gonna happen. Especially between Jen and Rusty. Which is a great thing. I don't mean to deride that at all. I really appreciate it. I do. We feel like we're good for tonight. I'll rush us out of here. I'm rushing. I really want to thank the admin team for being here. You guys don't get much of an opportunity to input, but I still appreciate that you guys are at least here to listen, because I believe that some of what we discuss gets back, trickles down from you guys to our staff. So I do appreciate you guys being here. find value in that. Thank you so much. With that, we are adjourned.